even cynical, hardened New Yorkers have been caught short by revelations of police corruption here. The poster boy for the new scandals is Officer Michael Dowd. He worked in the Black Ghetto, a big drug area, and he'd seemed a typical cop, 10-year veteran, 2 brothers in the force, son of a retired city firefighter. But since May of last year, he's been in jail because Officer Michael Dowd was a drug stealer and a drug dealer. Well, now for the first time since he was caught, Dowd has unburdened himself to a reporter. With his lawyer Marvin Hirsch at his side, I spoke with Dowd in the Manhattan jail where he awaits sentencing. He says his troubles began soon after he joined the force 10 years ago, when he says he realized his bosses did not want him to arrest drug dealers.
If you make an arrest when you take a couple crack vials off the street, your sergeant gets upset with you because you've taken yourself and maybe your partner off patrol. And he's got to do paperwork as well as you do for the next 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever it takes.
What are cops there for? What you're telling me is your superior officers didn't want you to make drug arrests?
That's a fact.
How many cracks you need, man?
Frustrated because he couldn't arrest the dealers, Dowd says that he and 15 to 20 other cops, his crew, started shaking down drug dealers.
It wasn't just my crew. It was every tour had a crew doing it.
And you would walk in on a drug dealer and...
Take whatever we wanted.
Take drugs, take cash, take whatever.
Whatever was there to be taken.
Actually, Dowd says he'd leave some of the drugs so the dealers wouldn't get too mad. He'd shake down about 5 dealers a day, keep the cash, sell the drugs, and make an extra $1,000 a week. And then he discovered he could hit the jackpot by stealing at crime scenes.
There was a guy laying on the floor dead. People in the city die for drugs and money.
So you figured you might make a score?
I figured that maybe there would be extra money or drugs laying around.
Were there?
Yes.
You scooped up the drugs?
Yes.
Now what do you do with the drugs?
Well, I had to walk past 15 cops to get it outside into the police car.
How'd you do it?
I just put the bag over my shoulder and I walked out the door with it.
A bag of cocaine?
Well, it didn't say cocaine on the bag.
And you walked past a line of cops, past the sergeant.
Well, they knew what I was doing. I know they knew, because they were smiling. Oh, here goes Mike.
And Mike was smiling when he struck it rich after a robbery.
In the basement, my partner and myself, and we found a couple of briefcases, and we had thought maybe it was cash in there, and we intended to take it. And when we realized we couldn't walk out with the briefcase, so my partner went and got a hacksaw and handed it to me, and I hacksawed the briefcase open.
And found what inside?
Half a kilo of cocaine.
And sold it for how much?
$14,000.
Dowd even arranged his own drug deals. This undercover police footage shows him giving a drug dealer a ride. During the ride, Dowd says, he bought some cocaine that he later resold. After a few years, Dowd finally hit the big time, making $4,000 a week, he says, selling his drugs back onto the street through a major drug dealer and warning that dealer about possible police raids. We were making $4,000 a week to deal drugs and $400 a week to be a cop.
Yes.
So how important was your police paycheck?
It really wasn't very important, truthfully.
You cashed it.
Deposited it. When I remembered to pick it up.
But Dowd's memory wasn't very good because he'd become an alcoholic and a coke addict. You actually snorted cocaine off the dashboard of your squad?
Yes. Yeah.
You're out on patrol.
Right.
And you're getting high.
Well, I was probably hungover, so I wanted to give myself a lift up.
And your partner's sitting beside you.
Yeah.
And isn't he saying, hey, Mike?
No, he was just watching out for me, making sure no one was looking.
Doing the same thing?
No, he wouldn't do cocaine.
How come?
He wasn't a drug addict. He was an alcoholic. He wasn't a drug addict.
Dowd claims the life he led was driving him crazy.
I was living 2 lives. I was a cop dealing drugs. Every day was a battle, personally.
Trouble talking to your wife? Trouble talking to your kids?
I couldn't do it. I was best off just coming home drunk so I go to sleep, and then if I was high, I'd stay up till 7 o'clock in the morning. My kid would go off to school, and then I'd fall asleep for about 3 hours and pass out and go to work.
Did your wife know what you were doing?
Well, she knows that I'm doing things wrong, but I don't tell her my business. And she's constantly telling me, whatever you're doing, stop. One night she put a gun to my head.
And?
And told me, if you don't stop, I'm gonna kill you. When's this gonna stop? She put a 9mm to my head, to my temple. I thought she was gonna kill me.
And you said to her?
I don't remember, Mike. I just rolled over and went back to sleep. I was drunk and high.
And Dowd says that most of the cops in his precinct knew that he was a drug user and a drug dealer. He didn't hide it. He bought 4 houses, wore expensive clothes, and drove to work in a $35,000 red Corvette. His fellow officers, he says, just looked the other way.
Every cop knew what I was doing and what the whole crew of cops were doing in my precinct and in every precinct in Brooklyn.
Dowd says many officers were dirty, but even the clean cops wouldn't rat on a fellow cop. That's the notorious blue wall of silence. But even worse, Dowd says, his supervisors didn't stop him because they didn't want a scandal.
This is the evaluation that...
A city commission investigating police corruption recently discovered one supervisor's glowing evaluation of Michael Dowd. At the height of Dowd's drug dealing in 1987, that supervisor wrote,
This officer could excel within the New York City Police Department and easily become a role model for others to emulate. Then in all caps ended it by saying, good career potential.
And Dowd claims the younger cops really did look up to him, but as a different kind of role model.
There's 15 or 20 of them hanging out with me in a bar after work, all rookies.
They knew that you had
Sure.
money to spend.
That's why they were there. They want to learn.
What did your father say to all this?
I was devastated. He's devastated.
Absolutely devastated. So it's like a death in the family. That's how tragic it was.
Jack Dowd says son Michael was his pride and joy, the family's star.
Honest, never a day of trouble, never gave us a reason to worry. And anybody who knew him would say, I could model my family after Mike. He was so good.
What happened?
He went in the police department.
Yeah.
His attitude changed, but never gave us a clue.
You have 2 other sons who are cops, New York City cops, right?
That's right.
They didn't get corrupted. Explain it.
I wish I could explain it.
The retired firefighter blames drugs and his son's supervisors, who, he says, knew Mike had a drug problem, but didn't get him help.
3 times he went to the police department. He asked for help. 3 times they told him, don't use the word drugs. Your job is finished. You say alcohol, and you go away for 30 days, you come back.
The department shouldn't have sent him back out on patrol with a badge and a gun. And a coke habit.
That's right. That was a travesty to the city of New York.
My mom is shot. You know, I got people calling me a bum and a lowlife, you know. And
he's ashamed of what he's done. He's ashamed of the problems he's caused for his family, the embarrassment for his family.
they raised 7 kids, Mike.
Are you the only bad one?
I don't know what bad is anymore, Mike.
Sure, the reason you're talking to me is because you'd like to get some of this out in front of the public and perhaps change the perception in the public that you are really, forgive me, a scumbag.
Well, Mike, I did some scummy things. I was confused. I was crazy. I was sick.
I've seldom read reports as bad as what were written about you.
I know.
And I don't think these tears are phony either. Your son is 7?
Yeah.
Would you want your son to grow up and be a cop?
No.
Because?
It's a thankless job.
As far as I'm concerned, all of them are on the take.
One self-appointed community leader, Sonny Carson, insisted that we interview him right in front of Dowd's old precinct house, the 75th.
Because the 75th is a crack house.
This precinct house is a crack
It's the
house?
biggest crack house in this area.
You don't know.
They're all in.
You don't know this?
Well, I don't know that they aren't either. I don't know that they aren't either. All I do know is that crack houses are open all around this area. Why are they open?
This guy, you know this guy?
I don't know any of them. They all look alike.
Huh? You want to talk to us a second?
Are you kidding? He's not going to
Give me a
talk to
minute.
you.
Give me a minute. Come on over here a second.
Wow.
Here's a guy with a lot of decorations. Berkowitz has had a lot of time. How much time you had in the force?
24 years.
There are crack houses in this neighborhood?
Right around the corner. They know it.
Absolutely.
There are.
Yeah, why aren't they closed?
Will you hold it a minute?
Okay.
Why aren't they closed?
Yeah.
We make the arrests.
Hey.
The court system lets them go. We do our job.
It's a bunch of BS. The only thing that this guy can do for me is to get a violin out now and accompany me with it. You understand?
I talked to Michael Dowd yesterday, and he began to cry because, really began to cry because he said he ruined his life and that of his family.
And all the other people around here whose lives he ruined. I don't feel sorry for him. He should rot in hell.
How many drug-dealing cops are out there? The head of New York Citizens Crime Commission says that in as many as 10 precincts in the poor neighborhoods, pockets of police are still mixed up in the drug business. Each pocket, like Dowd's group, involves about 15 officers. It's big money. And besides to some white cops, ghetto residents are, quote, just animals anyway. A guy who knows you told us Dowd is a Long Island cowboy, one of the white Long Island boys who police the black neighborhoods of New York City. They saw their precinct as a, quote, jungle, where the people are, quote, animals, not people.
Whoever said is a complete fool. I was shocked by the way the urban blacks lived. Yes, I'll admit that.
How do you mean? Shocked.
There's no respect for themselves and no respect for anybody around them.
As we said, he was a Long Island boy. And finally, after 10 years in the force, Dowd was arrested, but not by the police in New York City. Instead, he was caught by officers in Suffolk County, Long Island, where Dowd lived, and sold some of the drugs. But after you were arrested by Suffolk County, did the New York police get involved again and question you?
They never once came to me to question me.
Why?
They were embarrassed.
Dowd says New York City police officials still wanted to look the other way, still wanted to avoid a scandal, but now it was too late. Too late for the department, too late for Dowd.
I'm not a bum. I wasn't a bum before I became a police officer, but becoming a police officer led me in these directions. If your peers happen to be doing these things, then you do them too.
Michael Dowd is waiting now to hear his sentence. He could get 12 to 15 years.
Next tonight, a real-life police drama. From coast to coast, big city police departments have at one time or another had to face a corruption scandal. Each new headline provokes a discussion about what makes a good cop go bad. Last summer, correspondent Betty Ann Bowser went searching for some answers within the New York City Police Department. Here's her report on two police officers and the different roads they traveled.
It was the latest chapter in a sorry saga. 16 police from the Bronx's 48th precinct arrested just weeks ago on corruption and brutality charges. Stealing money, stealing guns, beating up suspects, and even bystanders. For more than 2 years now, New Yorkers have been watching scenes like these, and there's more to come. Investigators say at least 10 of the city's 75 police precincts may ultimately be involved before the current wave of corruption runs its course. Yet, for every cop in cuffs, there are thousands more who never cross the line.
They made it seem like there was rampant corruption. It's not. There really isn't. I mean, I really haven't seen any. You know, there's nobody out there robbing drug dealers. We found out there was a few, but the majority, it's just not there. Most of the guys are just out doing their job.
It's rush hour in Manhattan's East Village. On the edge of the crowd unnoticed, Sergeant Steve Osborne is just doing his job. Till recently, Osborne headed the 9th Precinct's anti-crime unit, an elite plainclothes squad that patrols the streets day and night, trolling like fishermen for street crime. To ride these streets with Osborne is to have a cop's eye view of an utterly alien world most of us never see.
You got to understand that the bad guys out there on the street are bad. they're predators. They're just mean, evil people. And the only thing standing between them and you is me. And if I'm afraid of them, if I'm intimidated by them, you're in trouble.
Former cop Michael Dowd also knows the streets of New York.
You get cursed at, you get the middle finger thrown up at you. You never know the person, and they'll do it to you. So, you know, I'm not going to say you don't get people waving hello, and you do. But like everybody, you only remember the bad.
Dowd not only remembers the bad, bad is what he became. Living on the dark side of a cop's world as an almost one-man crime wave. 2 years ago, he served as a virtual poster boy for the Mullen Commission investigating police corruption.
While you were in uniform and on duty, did you engage in narcotics trafficking?
Yes.
Did you protect drug operations?
Yes.
Did you engage in personal drug use?
Yes.
How many crimes and acts of corruption do you estimate you committed as a New York City police officer?
Hundreds.
While Steve Osborne patrols the streets, Michael Dowd is serving 14 years in a federal prison for his crimes. What do the two have to do with each other? Nothing. And everything. Both have strikingly similar backgrounds. Suburban kids who took their dad's advice and went into big city police work a dozen years ago because they wanted to help people. And both can tell you strikingly similar stories about a cop's life, about pressures and common experiences that cut across the whole profession to create a worldview, a culture, if you will. It is an outlook that often leads to cynicism, burnout, or worse. Jim Fife is a criminologist and former New York City cop.
The police culture is not what is shown on NYPD Blue. That's sort of a cartoon version of it. Much of the work that police officers are asked to deal with has no solution. So cops become accustomed to dealing with insoluble problems. They wonder why they're out there. They become extremely cynical. They feel unrewarded by the brass. They see inappropriate conduct going unpunished by the brass. And your sense of values becomes upset.
The problem is always present, but different cops fight it in different ways. On this fall afternoon, Osborne was cruising with anti-crime officer Joe Scalogna, who picked up a call about 4 teenagers rifling a payphone.
All right, they're right in front of Ben and Jerry's now. They've seen us, and they're concerned about us, but they won't pick you guys out.
Osborne's car followed at a discreet distance as the 4 kids began walking east on St. Mark's Place.
10 and 3 ourselves here.
Yeah, we got him. The guy with the purple shirt. Want me to take him on foot, Ozzy?
Yeah, go ahead.
As Osborne turned the corner onto 2nd Avenue, the teens walked into a candy store on the same corner. To most people, they might look like 4 kids out for a stroll after school, but Osborne's eye saw more.
When we first picked them up, they were hanging out on the corner, and they were watching everybody going by, which that in itself isn't unusual, but it was just the way they were doing it. Then they go down to another corner, and they do the same thing. Then they walk around the block and end up right back where they started from.
The kid that was east on St. Mark's is now west on St. Mark's?
Yeah, 3 of them are westbound on St. Mark's, and number 4 is still sitting on the corner.
All right, I'm going up to 3rd Avenue. I'm 3rd and 9, man, right now.
Down 4.
The 4 teens went back east to the candy store, then west on St. Mark's again, then north on 3rd Avenue. Each time the cab stayed close enough to watch them, yet far enough to avoid being spotted. Officer Tony Casillo watched from behind a bus stop on foot while Osborne parked across the street.
You got them, Joe? I got the guy in the yellow, but I don't see the other 3.
They're on my side of the street. I got it. Buses are my Jesus Christ.
They were checking everybody out. They would split up, get back together again. They would start to follow somebody. Then they'd back off, hook up back together again, go into another store. One would go in the store, come out. Another one would go in the store, stay for a few seconds, come out. Do you shop like that? No, I don't shop like that.
All the while, hundreds of people passed on the street, oblivious to the tense, tedious cat-and-mouse game going on under their noses. It's one reason most cops feel no one else understands what they go through. Over time, that view can breed an us versus them mentality. Some days end with the satisfaction of a good collar, an arrest, but not today. After more than an hour, the 4 teens disappeared into the bowels of the New York City subway system. Perhaps a crime had been in the making here, and 3 good cops could have stopped it in progress. But there are no medals for crimes that didn't happen.
And that's the way it happens. Next time we'll follow a couple of guys and, we'll get a hit.
And even when you get a hit, there's no guarantee these guys are going to go to jail.
No.
How do you deal with that day in and day out?
Because if we do lock them up, if we get them doing one, they're not going to do any more stores that day. And it's a little consolation prize. You locked them up once, they got away with it, but now they've got 1 arrest on their record. So now you say, well, maybe next time they get locked up, they'll get a little jail time.
Are you rationalizing all of this in your head so it doesn't make you crazy?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah, because you can't let this all get you down. If you let it get you down, then you're going to get frustrated and you're going to get burned out, and in a couple of years you're not going to be good for anybody.
That's how Steve Osborne deals with the frustration of the ones that got away. But not all police handle it so well. Peter Mancuso is a former New York City cop who runs a support group for police with problems.
Officers are out there, they can't attain their goals, and some officers begin to slip into other modes to deal with that state. One of them is they begin to substitute. They begin to substitute other goals instead of the policing goals. They begin to substitute things like financial gain in some cases, where it leads to corruption. Some want to innovate. Some want to go out and give out street justice.
Unless you know how to keep those feelings under control. We watched Osborne and partners one night as they searched the roof and backyard of an apartment for evidence in an apparent street crime. A teenager in this building had accused a man of threatening him with a gun a few minutes earlier. Some witnesses said the gun might have been tossed to someone who took off in a car.
Shut the car off. Off!
15 minutes later, Osborne caught up with the car. No gun here either. Osborne thinks it was ditched. There was nothing left to do but make a joke with Jeffrey, the car owner.
You're not a bad person no more, right? I'm looking at the new... I never was a bad person. I heard different. Yeah, I know.
All right, so if you get that corrected, then everything will be all right.
But this is the new Jeffrey.
As if you improve.
You're not the same person that I used to know.
Oh, I was never bad.
We know that he did at least 1 homicide, and there wasn't any witnesses, and he got away with that one. A lot of people are afraid to testify against him. And that's why tonight, when the gun was dumped off, he knew we had nothing on him, and that's why he walked up real cool, being a nice guy. And I wasn't being sarcastic when I was talking to him about the old Jeffrey and the new Jeffrey. There's no new Jeffrey. This is the same old Jeffrey. He's a killer.
A cop had just met a killer on the street. The cop knew the killer was a killer, but couldn't do anything about it. The killer knew the cop knew, and he knew the cops couldn't do anything either. It's one of those odd moments perhaps only cops really understand.
Have a nice night.
A moment you can't discuss with your wife when you get home because she's probably asleep.
I get off at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Who else am I going to go hang out with? All my other friends are sleeping. They got to get up in a couple hours to go to work. We work the same hours. We understand each other. We could tell each other anything. After a night and something really hairy happened, maybe we'll stop out for a beer or two and you could talk about it and laugh about it. Not that it was funny, but you got to blow it off a little bit.
Over time, the constant sense of shared danger and frustration leads to a feeling that the only person a cop can trust is another cop. It's an ethic of loyalty at all costs that can sometimes get out of control. Osborne confronts those same feelings as all big city police, but somehow Something inside of him keeps him from going bad.
Once you cross that line, you ain't coming back. And you're going to find that once you do cross that line, most of the guys don't want you back. It's a really hard job. It's a difficult job. Day in, day out, it's a difficult job. And when guys do stuff like that, it makes it twice as difficult for the rest of us.
Most police spend their days and nights worrying about the real physical threats that might be lurking around every corner. But the threats are more than just physical. Over time, the years of pressures and dangers change the way many police think about their work and their environment. Some can handle those changes and remain whole and strong. A few can't and go haywire. But what's striking is how thin the line sometimes seems to be between the two.
The commission investigating police corruption in New York finished its work a year ago. Its star witness, former policeman Michael Dowd, is still in jail in Florida, where Betty Ann interviewed him last summer.
He grew up on Long Island, the son of a fireman who gave up his college accounting studies to follow his dad into the civil service. In 10 years as a New York City policeman, Dowd, by his own admission, took part in countless acts of corruption. He robbed drug dealers, beat some up, ran a protection ring for others, trafficked in drugs himself, drank on the job, snorted lines of cocaine on a police car dashboard. None of this was a secret in the department, yet none of it was ever stopped. For 6 years, police department investigators tracked over a dozen stories and complaints against Michael Dowd, but couldn't make a single one of them stick. It was police in Suffolk County, New York, where Dowd lived, who finally arrested him in 1992 in their own drug probe. Dowd is now in federal prison in Florida, serving a 14-year sentence he received after completing his role as a Mullen Commission witness. In a rare interview, he talked about how he began his career in crime and how easy it was to pull off.
Give me a sense of how widespread it was to operate as the Michael Dowd that was put before the public in those hearings, the things that you testified to.
I could have done 100 times worse and gotten away with it.
100 times worse than the things you testified to?
Yes.
And could any New York cop have done the same thing?
With a little bit of intelligence, they could have done a lot.
And what did you believe in when you first started? What were your ideas about what the job would be?
I thought I could change the city, myself.
You really did?
Yeah, I really did, because I thought I was just that special.
And what did you find out in very short order?
It didn't take long to find out that I would have very little effect on anybody or anything that I came in contact with. I would see arrests be made either by myself or other officers, and the individual would be out on bail or just released by judges and prosecutors right from day one. They wouldn't spend any time in prison or jail, and it just had a deterring effect on my next goal, which was to maybe make a big arrest myself.
And did that make you feel despair or anger or frustration?
Well, I guess you became frustrated real quick. And I mean, the department itself wasn't so much pushing you to make arrests. They were just happy that you were out there in uniform looking good.
What about getting bad guys?
Well, that would be secondary, but it was certainly, they would like that, but at the same time, it was never an issue that they would force.
Were you surprised by that?
Of course, I was surprised by that. There's no impact as a police officer and no gratitude from other individuals around you, meaning superiors.
Was there at any point in this evolution, as you describe it, where there was an episode or something happened on the street that made you cross that line where you just said, well, to heck with it anymore, I don't care, I'm going to take what I want, do what I want?
It's hard for me to, I can pick specific instances where I did things, but I think it was more of a momentum. It was a momentum building, and that eventually nothing became beyond my ability to do. Could do anything as long as I wasn't caught by a boss, because another police officer would never hurt me.
Were you surprised by that?
No.
You weren't surprised that you could get away with almost anything?
No.
Why not?
Because you're basically taught that from day one. If a police officer is with you, he's never going to give you up. Your brotherhood, just the way it is. It's a protective net. You keep that net around you pretty much your whole life, throughout your whole time.
What is the protective net? I mean,
Well, you know you can say anything you want to say and know that the people around you aren't going to judge you and say, well, you're a police officer, you shouldn't be talking like that, or you shouldn't be doing that. Well, because they're police officers and they know just what you're saying and just what you mean.
and I think it's hard for people to understand why it has to be other cops. And why can't you go home and talk to your wife?
Well, I wouldn't want to upset my wife with the things I've gone through every day. You know, I carried a police officer who was shot in the head. I carried him to a hospital. Sharing that with my wife just didn't seem right, you know, so maybe you'll spend the night with the boys in the bar and drinking and talking about it and, you know, crying a little bit even, you know, sometimes it was difficult.
So you talk to other cops, you hang out with other cops, instead of going home and talking about it.
Because they understand. Your family becomes a police department. I mean, and I'm not saying the department, because all cops hate the department. But they all love each other, you know, and that's not always true, but I mean, they love each other in a certain way, and they'll stay with each other throughout. Your wife and your kids, you go to police department picnics, you know. I mean, you can't stand half the guys there, but you go anyway because you know you're safe there. You go out to dinner with your partner and his wife. You go on vacation with your partner and his wife. Everything revolves around it, you know, because no one else understands you. And it's something that you realize real quick. I mean, when you go to a party and you're 21 years old and you're a police officer and no one there's a police officer, they're all talking about you because they want to smoke a little reefer or something, and you're like uncomfortable and they're uncomfortable. So you realize real quick that this isn't going to work. So you begin to just hang around with police officers, whether they smoke reefer or not. You just stay with them.
And where does the public fit into all of this in terms of being a cop and protecting the public good?
I think that's a very important question, and I want to try and make, between us here, I want that to be answered properly. I handled more than 20,000 calls for assistance in my career. If you were the general public calling 911 for assistance, or you were a passerby who I was aiding in a situation, a traumatic situation, you were going to get 100% of my attention. So this whole charade about being corrupt and being dirty is not something that is you live on. It's something that you take a selective opportunity to be that way. I mean, I'm handling 20,000 calls for police assistance in a career of about 10 years, and I think I did a damn good job in those 20,000 calls. I mean, if you look in my records, you'll see I have very few, if any, complaints against me as far as improperly handling a job. And well, that's what we call it. A job is a call for 911.
But there were times that you made decisions that were bad decisions, that were corrupt, that landed you where you are today.
Yeah.
Suppose it was, you know, my family or somebody else's family that was that call. Are you saying...
You wouldn't have been affected by me because I would never do that to somebody that was in that situation. I made sure you were a drug dealer 99.9% of the time.
So in your mind, it was only the bad guys that you were doing this to. Could you give me an example?
What happens is I get a call for a burglary. I'm working with a new female partner. So I don't trust her. She probably doesn't trust me, but I really don't care how she feels. I know that what's in my mind at the specific location that I'm going to, I know it happens to be a drug house, meaning that there's been calls in the past for drug dealing there. So I know in my mind this is a target. She doesn't know because she's new in the precinct. So I make my approach to this apartment in a very cautious manner, number one, because I don't want to be injured, nor my partner to be injured. Number two, because I know that there may be a potential booty at the end of the road here. Make a long story short, I find a bag full of money. And I figured a way to get it out without her or the other officers on the scene to know. I found a hefty bag full of cash.
How much?
I'd say it's about $30,000 in cash in the bag. I had two friends of mine I split it with, so there was three of us that split the cash. Now, most people, don't have bags of cash laying around in their closet. And so I knew it was a drug dealer's home.
And in your mind, that made it okay?
Yeah. So you get frustrated and you take his money. You make him pay the tax, pay a price. Because you're never going to catch him with the goods, and if you do catch him with the goods, he's not going to do any time. So you make him pay. He's happy to pay, and you're happy to take it.
And what do you do with the money?
Whatever you please, spend it.
What did you do with most of the money that you took?
Spent it.
And what kinds of things did you spend it on?
Drugs, alcohol, vacations, clothes.
Did anybody ever say to you, Michael Dowd, you shouldn't do that? You shouldn't take money from drug dealers?
No one ever called me in and questioned me about any of my activities.
Never once?
Never about corrupt activities. I had been in internal affairs investigations a couple of times, and they were very easy to breeze through. I answered a few questions, I lied through every answer, and I went back to patrol.
Were you surprised?
No. I knew that's how it would go.
Did you ever feel any sense of power or any kind of euphoria about some of the things that you did? The danger of it?
There's always an element of that present in whenever you do something. But it became so routine at the end that after a while, it never affected you. In the beginning, of course, it was a natural high that, wow, I can't believe I got away with making some money. I made an extra $500 today, or I made an extra $1,000. Wow, that's great. But after a while, it was just, you become callous to everything. It wasn't enough money, or it wasn't enough drugs, or I didn't get drunk enough, on duty.
Did you ever think that you'd get back over to the other side?
I used to pray that I would, and it just never seemed to happen. I tell a story, I would cry myself to sleep in the morning, still high from cocaine, hoping that when I woke up, I wouldn't be craving cocaine, and I could be a straight cop once again, and it just never seemed to happen.
You told the Mullen Commission, when you were really into all your bad stuff, that you didn't see people as people anymore. What did you mean?
Well, you become very calloused and you have no appreciation for the person that is a living, breathing human being. You have no appreciation for them because they're just in the way. They're just part of the problem at the moment. You don't feel them as human beings. You don't treat them as human beings. It's a shame, but you become insulated from them. You don't feel what they might be feeling at that moment because you basically have no feeling left in you.
Do you have any idea what a frightening thought that is for the public to hear that from a former police officer?
I can only imagine.
Does it send chills up and down your spine to hear yourself say that now?
It does. It really, truly does.
Are you sorry that you did all those things?
I'm sorry that I did what I did to individuals, whatever that was, whatever that may have been. I'm sorry for that. Sorry is a word that we throw around too easily. I regret what I did because it's costing me all this aggravation and problems in my life.